Welcome to the Explainer. So, when you picture remote work in South Asia, it's pretty easy to get swept up in this highly romanticized vision of Sri Lanka, right? We're talking sweeping tea plantations, pristine surf breaks, and these ancient cultural sites you can go check out literally right after logging off for the day. But as remote work keeps shifting from just a temporary perk to a permanent lifestyle, the rules of the game are completely changing. The long-awaited Sri Lanka Digital Nomad Visa is officially live for 2026. And look, this isn't just about finding a cute cafe with decent Wi-Fi anymore. It's about navigating a brand new, highly structured legal reality. So today, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know before you start packing your bags. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to systematically cover the remote work legal shift, financials, fees and eligibility, a step-by-step application guide, the Year 2 tax trap, and finally, an Asia visa comparison. Starting off with Section 1, the remote work legal shift. To really get why this new visa is such a big deal, we first need to look at how digital nomads used to operate in Sri Lanka and why the government felt they urgently needed to put a formal system in place. For years, remote workers essentially survived on a patchwork system. The old way basically meant entering on a standard 30-day tourist ETA and then just constantly applying for long-term extensions. You could stay for up to 270 days doing this, but it was a massive legal gray area. You were technically a tourist, not a resident. And honestly, that brought constant anxiety, worrying about visa runs, struggling to sign a long-term apartment lease, or even just setting up local utilities. But the new way changes all of that. The government introduced an official digital nomad residence visa. It's a dedicated 12-month, fully compliant category that's actually monitored by the Department of Immigration alongside the Ministry of Digital Technology. It shifts you entirely out of the tourist stream and gives you formal temporary residency. So you finally get the stability to open a local bank account, sign an actual lease, and just operate with total legal security.
Moving on to Section 2. Financials, fees, and eligibility.
Now, of course, that legal security comes with some very specific requirements. $2,000. That is the magic number here. Applicants have to prove a consistent monthly income of at least $2,000 or the equivalent in whatever foreign currency you use. And I definitely need to stress this. It has to be entirely foreign sourced. Getting a local job in Sri Lanka is strictly prohibited under this visa. But what's genuinely great about this threshold is that the $2,000 minimum actually covers the main applicant plus up to 2 dependents, like a spouse or your kids. If you've got a larger family and want to bring more than 2 dependents, you'll just need to show an extra $500 of monthly income for each additional person. And hey, speaking of $500, that happens to be the exact cost of the annual visa fee. Keep in mind, though, this is per person. So the main applicant pays $500, the spouse pays $500, and each dependent pays $500 a year. You pay this fee right upon your final approval at the Residence Visa Division once you're in Sri Lanka. Oh, and don't forget, you are still going to have some minor upfront costs too, like paying for your initial tourist ETA to get into the country, plus a handful of local admin fees for your health and background checks.
So the crucial point here is this. Because you're getting a formal residence visa, the mandatory documentation is honestly incredibly rigorous. You can't just show up with a laptop and a smile. You need a passport with at least 6 months of validity. You need rock-solid proof of your remote work, like employment contracts, or if you're freelancing, your company registration and active client invoices. On top of that, you have to provide 3 consecutive months of bank statements proving that $2,000 monthly deposit is hitting your account. But look closely at these clearances. This is where it gets strict. You need a certified police clearance from your home country, and get this, it has to be less than 3 months old when you submit it. You also have to get a local medical clearance upon arrival, secure international health insurance for your entire stay, and get a formal recommendation from the Ministry of Digital Economy. It is a very robust dossier.
Let's move to Section 3, Step-by-Step Application Guide. Because of all those hyper-local requirements, Sri Lanka has set up a somewhat unusual test-before-commit application process. You can't just mail all this to an embassy. Actually, scratch that. You can't even finalize this entirely online. You have to finish it in-country. Here is exactly how it works. Step 1. You start by entering Sri Lanka just like a regular tourist, using a standard 30-day ETA you buy online. Step 2. Once you land, you use that 30-day window to localize your documents. This is when you go to your local health screenings, get any non-English documents translated, and apply for that initial clearance from the Ministry of Digital Technology. Step 3, armed with your massive stack of paperwork, you head over to the Department of Immigration's Residence Visa Division in Battaramulla, that's in the Greater Colombo area. You submit the physical papers, do your biometrics, and pay the fees. Step 4, once everything is verified, your tourist status is officially transitioned, and they stick a 12-month digital nomad residence visa right in your passport. It's actually a pretty fantastic way to test the waters and make sure you vibe with the island before committing financially to a full year. And speaking of testing the waters, we really have to talk about the ground reality of living there. While major digital nomad hubs like Colombo and the surf town of Weligama have excellent fixed fiber internet, we're talking routinely hitting 50 to 100 megabits per second, the broader infrastructure definitely has some vulnerabilities. Basically, the Sri Lankan power grid can sometimes take unplanned naps. If you want to keep your professional operations running smoothly, having mobile data backups is absolutely non-negotiable. You'll want to grab a local SIM or eSIM from providers like Dialog or Mobitel to tap into their 4G or their growing 5G networks. And another pro tip, when you're hunting for a long-term rental in spots like Gale, Herkatia, or up in the mountains in Ella, you must proactively verify that the property has a dedicated generator, or at the very absolute least, an uninterruptible power supply, a UPS, plugged into the Wi-Fi router.
All right, Section 4, and you'll definitely want to pay attention to this, the Year 2 tax trap.
So let's say you fall in love with Sri Lanka and want to stay longer than a year. Well, it all comes down to the 183-day rule. Under Sri Lankan tax law, if you stay in the country for less than 183 days in a single calendar year, you stay classified as a non-resident, which is great because that means your foreign-sourced income remains absolutely tax-free locally. But the literal moment you cross that 183-day threshold in a calendar year, the system automatically flips you to a resident for tax purposes. This is a massive detail for nomads who are used to just flying entirely under the radar.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it proves just how serious the government is about enforcing that integration. Let me read you this direct quote straight from the official immigration policy PDF on renewals. It says, along with the required documents for first issuance, applicant must submit a proof of tax registration via Inland Revenue Department. Just let that sink in for a second. To get your Year 2 visa renewal, obtaining a local tax identification number, a TIN, is a mandatory requirement. You literally have to formally register with the Inland Revenue Department. So if you're planning to make Sri Lanka your home for the long haul, you absolutely have to prepare for this financial step early, and you'll probably want to consult a cross-border tax specialist just to be safe.
Let's move to our final section, Section 5, Asia Visa Comparison. Now, Sri Lanka isn't operating in a vacuum here, and let me tell you, the race to attract remote workers in Asia is incredibly fierce right now. This matrix lays out a direct, data-driven comparison of the region. Let's look at the income requirements first. Sri Lanka asks for $2,000 a month, which perfectly aligns with Malaysia's DE Rantel Pass at $24,000 a year. It's a very accessible floor, especially compared to Thailand's Destination Thailand Visa, the DTV, which demands proof of around $14,000 sitting in a lump sum savings account. However, Sri Lanka faces some serious competition when you look at the fees and the length of stay. Thailand offers this incredible 5-year visa for roughly $300, granting you 180 days per entry. Malaysia gives you 12 to 24 months for just over $200. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka demands a steeper $500 annual fee. You have to do that in-person application process, and as we just covered, you have that mandatory tax ID requirement for a Year 2 renewal. Malaysia, on the other hand, keeps your foreign income fully tax-exempt, and Thailand won't tax you at all as long as you just don't remit the income into the country during the same calendar year. So what does this all mean? The ultimate question isn't just about whether you qualify for this visa. It's about what kind of remote work lifestyle you actually want. Sri Lanka's new setup is brilliant if you're looking for deep, culturally rich, and highly structured integration into an amazing island community. But it does demand a real commitment to their local bureaucracy. So will you choose the structured integration and breathtaking landscapes of Sri Lanka? Or does the flexible, multi-entry freedom of a place like Thailand better suit your nomadic needs? It's a huge decision, but now you have all the practical facts straight from the source to make it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.